This language lets you say anything you want with only 137 words, and I'm gonna learn it. Okama sona, doesn't that just look crazy?
What?
Sitelen Toki Pona. Toki Pona was created by Canadian linguist Sonia Lang because after learning 5 languages, she decided she could do better, which is a mentality I can relate to. While the world's simplest language might seem like a no-brainer for everyone to learn, having such a limited amount of words means even the simplest sentences can get really long. So why do I want to learn it? Toki Pona literally translates itself into the language of good, and in the book of the same name, it explains some of its benefits, like simplifying your thoughts, having deeper insights, and filtering excess noise. You get straight to the point. There's not a lot of room for small talk. And personally, it just sounds kind of fun. I should be able to learn this language in just 30 hours, which if I just practice an hour a day, means this is day 1 of 30. I started by researching different resources I could use to help me learn, and I found these 3 to be super helpful. Like most things I want to do research on, I start by watching YouTube videos about it. There were quite a few lessons available, and after skimming through a bunch, I found that Misali's series called 12 Days of Toki Pona worked best for me. One of the first things that I learned about the language is that it only uses 14 letters, and they're always pronounced the same. Anytime you see an A, it's gonna sound like ah, and so on, unlike English. All the letters probably sound like how you'd expect, except for J, which is pronounced ya, like in a lot of Slavic languages. Seems like a biased decision by Sonia, but it works, so I'll let it slide. I tried my best to take notes on the videos. I just used a spreadsheet to write down the words and definitions as they came up, along with some random rules I knew I needed to remember. The main thing everyone is wondering going into this is if there's less than 200 words, how am I supposed to say literally anything? Obviously, there's not a dedicated word for video games, but you have to think of how you can describe it. Video games are games on the TV. What's a TV? It's just a moving picture. So you could say something like Sitelen musi or Sitelen lawa, literally meaning moving picture game or moving picture that's controlled. There are so many ways to talk about literally everything, but I need to understand all of the Toki Pona words before I can talk about anything even kinda complicated. So I used my list to practice the vocab and come up with my own sentences.
Mi wile li pali e moku. Something like that.
But I knew there had to be a better way to learn the words than just looking at a big ol' spreadsheet. I looked for Toki Pona flashcards, but most of the apps had ads or didn't have the complete list of 137 words I needed. Toki Pona only started with 120 words, but a few more were added on, either because they provided a solid amount of value or because they really wanted a dedicated word for raccoons. But after a few days, I came across the second biggest learning tool for me, an app called Optimem. Essentially, the app shows you a word and you think of the translation. If you get it wrong, it'll show you that flashcard really soon after. And if you get it right, it'll wait a while before showing you again. Honestly, this app is the fastest way I've learned any sort of vocab. It was complete luck that I came across it, but I genuinely do recommend it if you're trying to learn Toki Pona. I'll have links to my whole Toki Pona journey in the description if you want to try it. I mentioned that I had 3 main sources of learning Toki Pona, but I had to do a lot of filtering to find the best tools for the job. But if you're learning a more established language like Spanish, French, or any of these, then today's sponsor, Speakly, can make it as efficient as possible. Speakly was created by 2 polyglots that each speak 7 languages. They researched all methods of teaching and learning and developed a system that teaches you words and sentences based on real-life situations. Memorizing a ton of words is good, but in the real world, they're not just gonna give you a vocab test to see if you're fluent or not. You need to know the words people use most often and the sentences built around them. Speakly gets straight to the point and teaches you the actual essentials of the language you're learning. They got it all: speaking, writing, and even music recommendations in the language you're trying to learn, actually letting you choose the way you want to study. Research shows that Speakly helps you learn languages 5 times faster than other methods, which means going from 0 to solid speaking skills in just 3 to 4 months with just half an hour of practice a day. You can try Speakly for free for 7 days and get 60% off if you join the annual subscription. So click the link in the description to start learning a language today. Thanks to Speakly for supporting the channel. After a few days, I could form some basic sentences. Yan ni li lukin
Sina, mi.
And I was feeling pretty good.
Nice.
But I was still far from understanding stuff like this. I knew I needed more dedicated lessons to get me there, so I ordered the official Toki Pona dictionary and realized it didn't really teach anything. It was literally just a dictionary. So I ordered the first official Toki Pona book, The Language of Good, which is my pick for the third and most useful learning resource. I straight up suck at reading books, but the lessons are only 60 pages and it's spread out really nicely so it's easy to read. It takes a lot more studying than just reading the book, but I'm confident if you use those 3 sources, you'll have a pretty solid start. I did all the translation problems as they came.
The little group has a new language. Kulupu lili li yo toki sin. Nice.
But there was something that seemed so simple that was pretty hard to get the hang of: grammar. Grammar in Toki Pona is set up really nicely, it's just not what I'm used to. You basically just lay out everything you're talking about, and you use different separators depending on the kinds of words you're trying to say. For example, we have the sentence, they ate a banana. I'd translate that to ona limoku ekili palisa yellow. The direct translation is more like they eat stick-like yellow fruit, which is easy to assume what that means, but if you accidentally mess up these particles or separators, it could mean that's a stick-like yellow fruit food, or they ate the fruit of the yellow stick. This is a pretty basic example, but with more complicated sentences, it can be really easy to mess up. Something I didn't really expect while learning Toki Pona was how it affected other areas of my life. I was genuinely enjoying learning Toki Pona to the extent that it was replacing the time I spent on my phone. Watching YouTube and eating cereal turned into reading the book and doing vocab. Instead of just being on my phone before bed, I was reading the book or doing vocab. Even when I did spend time on YouTube, it was usually something Toki Pona related or even something else educational. I know this makes me sound like a big nerd or something, but I think this is a solid development. After a couple weeks, I watched all 16 days of Toki Pona, I knew most of the vocab, and I finished the Toki Pona book. Honestly, I felt pretty decent about it already, and I could form most of the sentences I wanted to. If I ever needed help, I'd just check the dictionary or search up how people use certain words. And this was when, out of nowhere, I got the urge to journal. For some context, I have never had a consistent journal in my life. I started one when I was like 10 and it had a single entry, and I had one I wrote in during high school with just a few entries during the whole 3 years I was there. But for some reason, my will to learn Toki Pona translated so well into me just journaling about my life. I bought myself this blue notebook and have been writing in it just about every single day since then. Sitelen Toki Pona. This was already really cool to me, but one aspect of Toki Pona that I hadn't touched at all yet was Sitelen Pona, or the Toki Pona hieroglyphs. I was pretty intimidated by these. Sonia kind of just slapped these into the back of the Toki Pona book without any lessons for them, but let me tell ya, these were surprisingly easy to learn. That's right, I got a bonus resource. I guess it still falls under the YouTube category, but I found a series of lessons by Musi Lili that seriously made me learn Sitelen Pona at hyperspeed. You learn new symbols at just the right time and with great explanations for why they look the way they do. For example, a square is for lipu or document. A square with lines emitting outward is for sona or learning, like how a document emits knowledge. And if you put little writings on the document, it's Sitelen or any kind of writing or picture. I kid you not, I learned all the Sitelen Pona in like 3 days, and this is by far my favorite way of writing in Toki Pona. Now, I'm not gonna show you all my journal pages because, you know, it's my journal, but here's an example page I wrote out. Like, doesn't that just look so crazy? It's so satisfying just having my own little secret language. I could be writing super crazy or personal stuff around a ton of people, and they would never know. One of my favorite aspects of Sitelen Pona is how you use names. First, you Toki Ponize your name using the right syllables. Then for each letter, you pick your favorite glyph that starts with the same letter. Like if there's a W, you could symbolize power or birds with wawa or waso. And you just get to choose what you like the best, which is awesome. You put all of that in a little oval, and here's what I came up with for myself. But yeah, I was feeling pretty dang confident at this point, so I decided to test my knowledge with the Toki Pona Discord server. And I was pretty quickly humbled. I could understand the conversations if I spent a while on each sentence, but I didn't feel super confident in typing out my own. That might just be social anxiety though, I don't know. But anyway, now it's day 30, and for my final test, I'll throw out a few sentences for the whole internet to critique. Toki minimi li oto yenkin. Tenpo suno mute la mi kama sona e toki pona la. Sona mi pi toki pona li pona. Mi sona ni. Mi toki e ike lili. Taso toki pona en Sitelen Pona li pona mute tawa mi. Okama sona toki pona kin la. Sina ken yo e tenpo pona. So yeah, I think I'm around here on the knowledge curve. There's still lots of improvement to be had, but I think I've got a pretty solid start. Otoki e nasin sina pi kama sona toki pona tan seme tawami. And subscribe.